The other reality is, Chip, as I always tell people, I work with clients typically older than I am, right? You should never hire a financial advisor that's older than you. He's going to or she's going to retire on you, right?
Welcome to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, as is our practice now, David, we have so much going on at Retire Smart. Friends, let me just direct you to retiresmartomaha.com and our events page for everything we have going on. Now, we do have a class coming up, Smart Spend Down Solutions. We'll give you more details in the second segment of the show when Derrick Flores joins us. But in the meantime, as always, there's no charge and there's no obligation for our events, but you do need to register either online or by phone. So check out retiresmartomaha.com and the events page. All right, David. Well, here comes the election. Now, after the election, well, presuming we get a result in a timely fashion, we'll do the serious analysis. We'll ask for your deep dive on what does this mean now. But before the vote, David, our last crack at it, what do you see at your crystal ball?
Well, again, it's there's a lot that can get up in the air. We keep seeing a lot of mayhem out there, if you will. We see people being told they can't vote early in certain locations. We've seen ballot boxes on fire, and obviously people get pretty passionate this time of year, as we're getting closer to the election. But again, the predictive markets, the betting markets now are usually pretty accurate, frankly. It has Trump actually winning the electoral vote pretty solidly at this juncture. Of course, everything's wait to see. And, I just want to know if, the biggest thing for me would be, can we wake up in a week and the next morning have an idea who won the actual election? And I don't know that we can say that. And that's a little scary. But again, what it really matters, though, is what is the makeup of Congress the next morning? What is the makeup of the Senate? What is the makeup of the House? Because that will greatly affect the legislative potential changes and the direction that we move forward. And, again, regardless of your political favor, which party you want to vote for and which one of these candidates you like, I don't care about the party or the person. I care about the policy that they will enact. And we've studied the economic policies. And so I've stated it last week, I have to pull the lever for Trump. And I'm a registered independent. I was once a Republican for about 20 years, but I was an independent most of my life. And my wife convinced me to join the Republican Party. But, I've stated many times, I felt the Republican Party left me a while back. They choose not to focus on what I think matters. And this election comes down to two main points. People care about the immigration status, our border status, and they care about our economy, right? And deficits. And all those are intertwined, which is why we talk so heavily about this stuff. So I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't matter who wins the election. We've got some economic problems. And the question is, how fast does the pain come? And in what form does that pain come to our economy based on the election outcome? Because I believe it may come actually faster with Trump, be honest with you. The pain, because we may start cutting or we may lay tariffs down. Now, we'll remain to see if he's just going to use that as a heavy-handed bargaining chip or if he's going to start smacking them down to try and reduce the inflation, et cetera, in our country. But both sides are going to be inflationary, and we've been talking about that. We're going to see inflation tick back up. And then we have to pay attention not only to our economy, but the global economy. And Germany just skirted a recession. We actually, as of this recording, just missed it this morning. They had 0.2% growth, right? But their inflation is running back up. So their nominal growth is negative in Europe right now. And we've seen Volkswagen, one of the biggest employers in Germany, shutting down, and their stock is getting hammered as they're 64% light on profits. We're seeing earnings from companies like Eli Lilly miss, who's been on fire here lately, AMD, big chip. And then one of the high flyers, Supermicro, we've focused on this show earlier. I just pointed out actually earlier today, Ernst & Young, one of the most reputable accounting firms out there in the world, just said, we're not going to touch your books. We're not willing to do your audit.
Radioactive.
Yes. And that stock got hammered somewhere around 35% when that announcement came out. So all is not right with the world fiscally, and, we'll see what happens.
Well, to your point about economic pain and that it's inevitable no matter who wins, some folks are feeling it right now, David. You sent me a story. This is from CNN, all right, that says consumers reach their breaking point. forcing retailers to shutter stores at a worrying pace. This has become a regular drumbeat now. Major franchises closing hundreds, thousands of stores all over the country.
Oh, absolutely. And literally right here in Omaha, there's 2 restaurants that we do sometimes some of our events in that we just found out this week are closing their doors. And these are restaurants out at Village Point, a pretty decent area, you would think, economically. And if 2 mainstay restaurants cannot keep their doors open, what is that telling about the consumer? The consumer is tapped. They're paying record high interest rate on their credit cards with record high balances, and there's no end in sight. And we're starting to see, the rug get pulled out under the American consumer. Delinquencies are up in auto loans, mortgages across the board.
There's pressure in the retail marketplace. There's pressure building in the healthcare space, David. Fox Business headline, Biden administration states widen doorway for illegal aliens to Medicaid hospitals. I guess it's a new form of catch and release. This is going to burden Medicaid. It's going to burden the overall system, isn't it?
Yes, and this is what some of the American voters, again, regardless of party, are getting upset about. We pay our taxes in to have these safety net programs to provide for us if we fall into the category where we needed help. And Medicaid, all right, which we'll be talking a little bit about next segment, but Medicaid is meant to aid you in the ability you can't pay, right? And so they've been opening the doors, and the current administration is widening the path to allow those illegal immigrants that have crossed our border to the tune of about 14 million in the last 4 years to get access to this care without paying for anything, and you and I, the taxpayer, are paying for it at the detriment of our veterans who are not still getting the right and quality of care, the homelessness. And this is what we just need to prioritize. I have no problem trying to help people, but we should be helping our own first. And I think that is one of the defining issues in this political season. What do you think? And so, that's the policies that are really making people really wake up and now realize, where is our government spending their money? And I mean, we just keep evaporating dollars, and it's going everywhere, and people are getting upset. And $41 billion of COVID funds from the World Health Organization went missing. There was a story on that this week. Come on.
David, one of your recurring themes in recent weeks has been get beyond the rhetoric and look at the data, look at the evidence for where is the economy and where it might be headed. At bond markets, why is Stanley Druckenmiller doing what he's doing? Well, you sent the team a chart. This is measuring crude oil, and we have it on the screen for our YouTube viewers. You said that this is predicting a recession. Why?
So oil is an input, right? So the more we spend on gas and oil, that typically means more economic activity. We're driving our cars more to work, or more people are driving to work. We're delivering more goods and services. So oil is a great barometer, a leading indicator, if you will. And oil had came down for a while, and it reared back up quite a bit here recently. And that was based on, would there be a supply disruption, mainly due to Israel and Iran, right?
Okay.
And then we had Israel do some strategic bombing over in Iran. And what happened is, once they were kind of said they're done, they took out some defense systems. They didn't actually harm Iran's oil infrastructure, right? Which would have kind of been inflationary to the oil market. So oil immediately went back to pricing in, and you see the big gap down. It's a pretty big drop immediately, because now it's pricing based on just where the economic output of the globe is. And that's telling you recession is here. And I just mentioned the numbers that we're seeing in Europe. And again, we actually had GDP come out this morning before we recorded this show, and we missed for the quarter. We were expecting 3.1% GDP, and it came in at 2.8%. So our gross domestic product is still declining, and this is telling you where we're going.
Another observation you made recently, David, another signal, another indicator, the year-to-year job openings number was troublesome to you. Tell us about that. Yeah,
so year over year, you're looking at job openings, et cetera, and so it's called JOLTS, which is the Job Opening Labor Report, right? And so how many jobs are out there? And interesting, we saw the biggest revision up in that number a month ago, conveniently. A political candidate might have needed some help, I hear. And then this month, it went down, the biggest adjustment down. And so, we're seeing jobs vanish. The job openings for people that would be looking for work dropped by, I can't remember the exact number, but it was over 400,000 jobs disappeared, or job openings. And this is basically when you're posting a job on Munster or Indeed, CareerBuilder, these websites, the job openings are being pulled because companies are no longer willing to spend the money to hire people. Where they were after COVID, it was hard to get employees. They are now pushing back and realizing, no, we're not going to be willing to, because they were carrying employees for a while just because it was harder to hire and train, get people back. The labor market is literally flipping as we speak, and it's going soft very quickly.
Well, we'll look at all these factors and more once we get an election result. In the meantime, up next, Derrick Flores, Medicaid planner at Senior Asset Solutions, joins us to talk about our upcoming class on how to finance long-term care without wiping out your assets. Stay tuned to Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Are you worried about financing long-term care for yourself or a loved one? We have a class addressing that very topic. To tell us more about it, David, please welcome Derrick Flores to the show.
All right, Chip, thank you so much. Yes, in studio for the first time joining us is one of our resident authorities on everything, not Medicare, but Medicaid. And it's very important that you understand the differences between the two. So welcome to the show, Derrick Flores.
Thank you, David, so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here for the first time. Really excited.
No, this is awesome. So Derrick works with one of the companies that we affiliate with called Senior Asset Solutions.
Yes.
We've had Michael Luna on the show many times, where you guys help basically a lot of our clients, but you help a lot of people in general. You work with a lot of estate planning attorneys, a lot of other financial advisors, not only here, but over in Iowa, et cetera. You're helping clients understand they don't have to just spend down all their assets to pay for nursing home care or in-home health care, et cetera, due to changes basically in the law that happened way back in 2005 that nobody really talks about, right?
Yeah, no, correct. Like, people only assume they only have one option to go about spending for their nursing care is just spending down all their assets in that nursing care. People don't really know the options they have available to them now presently, because these things only, like you said, only came present within the last 15 years or so. So it's really eye-opening. We're having a class here November 9th, our next smart spend down solution workshop. And, generally the information I get from people coming from the class, is just how informative it is, and just wishing they would have known about this information a lot sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll give you the information on how to register for that class if you'd like to come here when we're done the segment here in a bit. But you will have to register. That is one of our most popular classes, and it always fills up. And then the number again is 402-369-7777. What we want to do is just help people understand this, because traditional way to help yourself cover for what we're talking about is basically long-term care. So Medicare, okay, we're in open enrollment right now for Medicare, and so that's whether you're buying supplemental policies, drug cards, which is Part D, or you're across the aisle on what we call the Advantage side or Medicare Part C. Which, by the way, a lot of people are getting a big shell shock this year what their out-of-pocket is there. So it's big changes coming. And we have a class for that as well. But, we can talk about that later. But Medicaid is helping people spend down. And so the traditional way you can cover for these things is you can self-insure and just write the check if you happen to be blessed to have the assets. You could buy traditional long-term care insurance, which was pretty popular early in my career. I've been doing this over a quarter century now, and a Cadillac plan, though, covered about $100 a day in benefit, because that seemed like it would be great back 25 years ago. That doesn't go very far today.
No. Usually, assisted living is where we see the lower cost, and even then, you're spending around $200 a day, and a $100 a day long-term care policy is only going to last so long.
And that's on the lower end, because some of these facilities, depending on how big a care you need, can be $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a month.
That's just assisted living. When we talk to long-term care facilities, that's when you really start to see the increase in value, cost. Level 1 care usually is around $10,000, and it just increases with each level of care going up. When you have memory care, that's when you really see the cost come. That's around $15,000. I've even seen $25,000 for respiratory care for individuals, which is really shocking, because that number blew me away. And $25,000 a month alone just for care is just outrageous.
And obviously the facilities and the types of treatments are going to range. But here in Nebraska, assisted living, the most common what we see is somewhere around $4,700 a month or so, right, today. And the average person stays in there 3 years and 2 months, I believe, right now is the most updated numbers. So that means if you're spending, $4,000 to $5,000 a month, just rounded up for simple math, and next year's inflation times basically almost 40 months, that's over $200,000 that you're going to spend for that facility. What you guys do is you show people how they can legally actually help get the government to pay for part of those dollars for them without having to have traditional long-term care insurance, and you also get to save some of the dollars that can go to the surviving spouse or to the children, et cetera, through those changes that happen that, again, we were talking about way back in 2005. The insurance industry is now innovated to catch up, if you will, and is now providing some solutions.
Yes,
right?
correct. They finally are making adjustments to this long-term, the long-term care cost for people and individuals. And, we work with elder law and estate planning attorneys, so everything we do has to have a stamp of approval from them. And so when we go with an individual, if we're looking at a spouse or a single individual, each situation is a lot different. For married couples, for example, the community spouse, which is still living in a home, they're still allowed their one home, one car, and $154,000 in total assets. While the other individual who's actually receiving the care will only receive $4,000 in Nebraska. If you look at Iowa, it would be the same for the community spouse, $154,000, but the individual receiving care would only receive $2,000 in personal allowance.
That is not a lot.
Yeah, no, and it's really not. So they really do make it really stringent for individuals to, get this care for themselves and for their loved ones.
And so one of the ways you guys are able to do this is help people file a correct application to become Medicaid compliant, right, and get accepted to Medicaid. One, just knowing how to get through the application process is something you guys provide. And then the other thing is you use unique products that not a lot of financial advisors offer. And the reason is because the way they're compensated. Unlike a traditional life insurance or long-term care policy, we would get paid some form of compensation from the carrier, a commission, to place that policy on a client. And so there would be revenue for the person doing the work. The problem is in the Medicaid compliant space, there's these Medicaid compliant annuities you guys have access to, but there's only a handful of places you can get them. There's only a handful of carriers in the country that actually offer them, and they don't typically pay a commission. If they do, it's very small.
Yeah, it's very minimal, if anything.
And
really.
So you guys actually show people how you can just charge them a simple flat fee based on the case and what the work is, but it's a pretty good return of investment, in my opinion, on the value you're providing, because you're saving. I remember just chatting with your team based on a referral that we'd sent, and it's like $400,000 in savings that would have been going to a facility.
No, it could be even more for each situation. It depends on how much. Usually we can save over about 60% of assets from going into nursing care from paying.
Man,
down,
that's amazing. So this is a class that we provide. It's called Smart Spend Down Solutions. It's coming up. It's going to be on November 9th. That is a Saturday morning, 10:30 a.m. and again at 1 p.m. It's about an hour-long class. You don't need to attend both, just one of those. But they do it twice because it becomes so popular. And so please register. You can go to the website, click on our events tab, or you can give us a call at the number provided, 402-369-7777. And then in that class, basically, you're going to have your boss, I believe, teaching the class, Michael Luna, who kind of is the president of Senior Asset Solutions, along with Colin Kastrick, an elder law and estate planning attorney. And they do a great job of explaining the intricacies of the law, how this planning works, and how clients can protect themselves. So who do you think should be in the class? Who should be attending this?
Really, I think anyone who would be wanting to plan proactively, when we say proactively planning, we would say about 5 years is when we would like to start. If you could start sooner than that, that'd be great. But 5 years is when we really like to start the proactive planning. And Colin Kastrick really gets into that in his part of this seminar. And then, but if you're needing care right now, if you have a loved one who's actually in the facility, or who's going to be entering the facility within a year, that's usually where we want to attend this class. Show them the options they have.
So we kind of call that crisis planning, right?
Yes.
They're already spending the money, or they're about to start spending the money pretty quickly, and you guys are able to come in and very quickly. In some cases, people only have to pay maybe 3 months of out of pocket, and then they're covered, et cetera. And every situation again is unique. So again, if you're out there and you're like me and you have mom and dad still alive, both Melissa and I have both our parents alive in their 80s, and I have both my parents. We're looking at facilities. We're having those conversations. Now, my parents have been divorced for over 5 decades, et cetera, but they live in different states. But I'm having to discuss with both of them the potential that this is where they're going to end up living, because it's the kind of care that they're going to need. And so how do you protect them is we sit down and say, okay, We don't have the 5 years to cover the 5-year look back, so you guys will cover that in the class, but you can still protect the assets that they have. And it doesn't matter if these assets are in an IRA, 401k, in just in a joint account, in a CD down at the bank.
Nope.
You can protect these assets.
Yeah, any liquid asset, even homes, secondary homes, vacation homes, other cars, people have multiple cars, any asset, any really countable asset that is in your possession, in your name, is going to be looked at.
All right. I think you guys would love to come to this class. Again, if you have your parents or this is affecting you or a loved one, you want to register for this class, 402-369-7777. That's all the time we have for the segment this week. Derrick, thanks for stopping in the studio.
Thank you so much, David, for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, Chip, what do we have next?
Up next, you have questions. David Brooks has answers. Q&A is next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Into the Q&A we go. David, the first question is about workplace policy. You might be entitled to an I told you so on this one. All right, so the question is, what do you think of Amazon telling workers they must return to the office?
Yeah, I guess I can say I told you so. Listen, remote employees, I know some people think it's great, but there is so much productivity lost over the long haul. Innovation is what's really lost because there's no what we call water cooler innovation. I can't walk by, Chip, I had an idea for the radio show. Hey, and so there's none of that just happens spontaneously unless it's all scheduled meetings. So what Amazon did, because there was some backlash when they tried to push everybody back to the office over about a year ago, they started to push this move back after all this remote work. And so they settled on a hybrid policy, trying to kind of soft walk it with their employees. Yeah. You could come to the office 3 days a week and you could work from home too. And a lot of companies embrace this hybrid methodology. And now they're like, nope, you got to be here 5 days. And the reason is very simple. Is you choose a different 3 days than I do, we still don't have the camaraderie, the innovation, and productivity suffers. And I keep trying to explain to young people that are looking for jobs or changing jobs and they get offered remote work. I got this job, it's remote. Just be careful because the first person that is cut in a recession is the remote employee. Out of sight, out of mind. Companies will fire you on the spot because they can't see the productivity that you're doing. And so, and not only that, there's been so many employees at these larger companies where there's people you can buy, ironically, at Amazon, you could buy mouse movers, these things that would move your mouse and have your keyboard play down. So people would be sitting on their back porch and smoking a cigar and acting like they're working
like they're
just
working
because
the keyboard.
I mean, so, and the companies have had enough. And again, as we switch from where the employee had the upper hand in negotiations in the labor market, that is very quickly switching. We have over 103,000 job losses in the month of April in job cuts announced already, according to daily job cuts, and that's pretty high. And so as we see, if this continues, this pattern continues and accelerates, if you're a remote worker, you might want to volunteer to get back in the office because this is going to become the norm across the board.
Well, I grinned when when I saw this and thought of you because I came to work here in June of 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. You said, yeah, come on in. We're open and we're staying open. Now, we had masks. We wiped down surfaces. We accommodated clients. Some clients preferred a Zoom or something to coming in, but others did come in. And no, because...
I stayed home 3 days,
Well, you got flattened. You had your turn with COVID, got flattened by it, and then boom, back at it. Because you said, no, we're staying open, and all of us who can be here because it's just not the same.
It's so true.
Remotely.
And we see it across the board. And I've seen other companies, and I have a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs in a lot of various industries, and we're seeing that across the board. They tried to work remotely. They tried to allow that. And there's a handful of professions where that may still work, but for the majority, it's going to be show up or don't get a paycheck.
David, the next two questions actually are about 401ks. First one is, help me understand the mandatory 401k withdrawal rules at 72. Is it still 72 or has it changed?
Okay, it has changed several times. And so what we're referring to is what's called RMDs, or required minimum distributions. Now, the questioner here on the screen is mentioning a 401k. So we need to make sure people understand if you're working and it's an active 401k. Your current employer's 401k, you do not have to take any withdrawals. You get an exemption because you're still actively working and probably putting money into it.
Even if you've crossed the threshold
Even
age?
if you've crossed the age threshold.
Oh, okay.
But once you leave work and you're past your RMD age, then you would have to take it. Now, because of massive legislative changes over the last 4 years, we now have 4 different ages with which you would have to take these required minimum distributions. So the original RMD age, required minimum distribution age, was 70 and a half. And that was basically, if you were born before 1950, that was you, all right? Then we changed it and pushed it out to 72 with the Secure Act. But then due to the Secure Act 2.0, we pushed it, and the CARES Act, we push it to 73 and 75, respectively, depending on what year you are born. So basically, if you're born in 1950, it's 72. If you're born in 1951 to 1959, it's actually 73. And if you're born like me, 1960 or later, it's actually now 75. Are you confused? This is why it's not for the faint of heart, because here's the thing. If you don't take the distribution that you are required to take, the penalty is pretty severe. Now, the good news is the penalty has been cut in half, Chip. It used to be 50% of the required amount was a penalty, and you still had to pay tax on the whole amount. So you actually went negative on that distribution, right? So you pay tax on it, but then pay 50% penalty. Now it's a 25% penalty. And again, the distribution is still going to be fully taxable if it's in a tax-deferred account. So what we help a lot of clients, our clients help with, is understand you may be able to stick money away in a tax-free side of the account at work. 92% of all 401ks in America offer a Roth version of it. In other words, you can get the tax bill paid today while taxes are actually lower than what they're going to be in just 13, 14 months due to current legislative law. So, you know, these are things we help people with all the time, deciding, should I take RMD if I'm working? Should I start to get it out? Should I be converting? Should I put money in the Roth side versus the traditional side? This is where a competent financial professional can help you make really good decisions.
If we're talking about a Roth account, the required minimum distribution, that goes away, right?
When we get it to a Roth IRA, if you leave it in the
Okay.
401k, you're still going to have to take distributions. So you would roll that to a Roth IRA, and then you can keep it there and pass it to your kids tax-free in most cases.
Here's another 401k question, David. Do I take the same amount out every year at the same time once I start withdrawing?
That's a great question. The answer is no. So basically, when you have to
So you're
take,
not locked in.
No, so you have to, it's based on the account value at the end of the year. So basically your 12/31 balance every year, and then we're going to use a divisor that the IRS gives us, and it's based on mortality, right? And so basically your first year, what it equates to, it's not a flat percentage, it goes up. The first year it's basically 3.78%, so just under 4%. But each year, as your life expectancy shortens, the divisor, we divide by divisor, the divisor number gets smaller, therefore the distribution gets bigger because your life expectancy is shorter. So by the time you're in your mid-80s, you're starting to take 9, 10, 12% out of your account each year, which means, one, you're paying a way bigger tax bill than anyone's ever told you you're going to pay in retirement. 2, you're most likely now going to incur penalties, as 74% of retirees are on those distributions, to Medicare and Part B and Part D, and nobody tells anybody about these. These are what's called IRMA penalties. And so you end up sometimes, Chip, a married couple, one person may have done really well, I call it the success penalty, and saved up a decent amount in their IRA. You got $1 million in your 401k when you're 60. And because you have other assets, you've been smart, you've paid off your debts, you don't need it. And so you mistakenly keep deferring this account because we don't want to pay taxes. Let's grow it, Dave. And then when you take that distribution out, sometimes it will trigger as much as 8 different taxes on one distribution.
Ouch.
Yeah. And so we have to help people understand it's very complicated how to do the divisor and then get all the money out in the most tax efficient manner possible, which is literally what I created software to help our clients navigate this very scenario. So again, make sure you're working with a competent professional before you just go, well, I'll just take some out, because not only can you overpay in taxes, you can create tax penalties on healthcare, Medicare B and D. You can end up losing your Social Security. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen.
As you often say, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
Hey, speaking of working with a professional, now this question's kind of intriguing. Why do you like working with people in retirement?
Well, they're happier. It's I work with two main types of clients. I work with entrepreneurs who successfully built businesses, and we do unique tax planning for them. And then we focus a lot of our time on people that are about to or are already retired. And the reason is I have found through my career that these are the ones that get penalized the most for not knowing all the legislative updates and the tax rules as they get into retirement. Because, I mean, Chip, you're of the age, you're in the baby boomer generation, but what were you told about investing for retirement?
Oh, defer
Right.
when it comes to
defer
taxes.
your money in a tax-deferred account like
It's
a 401k.
the main thing I've learned on this job, the ways you can get blitzed and blindsided, especially on taxes.
Everybody
in
was
retirement.
told they were going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, we've retired over 2,500 people, right? I've done this for a while now. It's just not true. It's only true for about 4% of the people that I have worked with in my entire career that would actually go to a lower tax bracket in retirement. This myth that you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. Do you want to cut your standard of living by 50% when you walk into retirement, and not have any income? And not only that, even if people said yes to that question because of the RMDs we just talked about, so what? You're going to pay taxes because we're going to force you to take this money. And you get forced income, whether you're blessed to have pensions, railroad retirement, Social Security. Those checks come every month and create a tax liability, and it stacks on top of each other. And again, you've got to know how to put all the pieces together. But we love working with retirees because we find that they need the most help. And one, they're just a lot of fun to work with. But the other reality is, Chip, as I always tell people, I work with clients typically older than I am, right? You should never hire a financial advisor that's older than you. He's going to or she's going to retire on you, right?
All right. Well, that was kind of fun because I think listeners and viewers on YouTube will recognize, it'll resonate with them what I'm saying. Having worked with you and seen this from the inside now for the better part of 4.5 years, this is not just a job or even a business for you. This is a mission. You bring missionary zeal and passion to advising people on retirement, especially when it comes to taxes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and people always like, well, when are you going to retire? I'm like, look, I am retired, right? Retirement
I'm doing
to
what
me,
I want to do when I want to do it.
That's exactly right. It's doing what you want to do when you want to do it. So therefore, I consider myself long retired.
Up next, Suze Orman says she swears by a certain retirement account. It's an account near and dear to our hearts at Retire Smart. We'll tell you about it next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. David, we are going to get to Suze Orman, but first, you sent me some video, and I think we have, for YouTube viewers who can see it right now, this is Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, some would say controversial, very conservative president of Argentina, and he is a passionate fiscal conservative. In this video, there's an org chart, there's a flow chart on the wall with different government departments, little stickers on the wall, and he keeps tearing them off.
You're out of here.
Ministry of Education, gone. Department of Social Development, gone. Gone. He's saying we are streamlining government. We're cutting out all this bureaucracy. It's very entertaining. He turns, we don't have the audio up here, but he turns to the screen and just shouts, "The thievery of politics is over. Long live freedom." We've talked about him before. This guy, speaking of people who are a missionary, bringing a missionary passion to what they're doing, that's Milei in Argentina. But actually, on a more serious note, David, you showed me something right before we sat down to record this show about Argentina's debt crisis now receding. Argentina is not the fiscal basket case it was because of Milei's approach.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, I mean, the people were scared as aggressively as he cut departments, and we need to do that here, literally. And there's talk of Elon Musk helping head up like a new Department of Government Efficiency to help eliminate, we have, as I think I mentioned last week, we have 438 different federal agencies. That's more than one per congressman. I mean, that is absolutely insanity. And every one of them is spending millions and millions and millions of our tax dollars, and most of it is absolutely wasted and not needed. I mean, I'm sorry, but the Department of Education is one of the biggest drains to our economy. That was started under Jimmy Carter, right? And I know that's a little bit near and dear to your heart, the Department of Education, even our state levels, because of the lobbying that they go to. We have not improved our education at all. So why wouldn't you just take a look at something and see if it worked or not? Did you get an ROI? If the government invested in an area and it got better, okay, then maybe it makes sense. But in fact, we've gone from a top 10 in the developed world of education systems to not even the top 30 anymore.
The more government has gotten involved, the more it's declined.
And that is a fact. The big government is bad. And so we need to rip apart some of these agencies. And the video is great of Javier just ripping those departments off the wall. But we need to get serious about that. But here's the thing that I care about, because now that was several months ago. Now we have fiscal reports showing that their debt actually got a better rating because they're actually got their fiscal house in order. I spoke about it probably a month ago. He got inflation from the high 18% all the way down to about 3.5% very quickly because he's getting rid of excess government spending and he's firing people. He actually flies coach around the country in Argentina on a plane because he wants to save money. So we need that kind of seriousness in both our local governments and our federal government. And so I'm very excited to see what would happen, because you're going to get some people come in here to maybe if the election goes the way I think it's going to go, and start to shred some of these departments and waste, because we have to get serious about our fiscal debt. And we cannot pay. We're over $1 trillion a year. We spoke about it extensively last week in interest payments on our debt. And we have to get serious, or we'll get to that precipice where we'll become a Venezuela or Zimbabwe, and the inflation will go catastrophic very quickly.
Well, there's been an effort in this campaign cycle to demonize something called Project 2025. That's actually, it's a heritage foundation project, but it's limited government. It's trying to pare government down and get back to the Constitution. I think that's what Republicans have been promising for 20, 30, 40 years. So
yeah, never delivered. Hence, I left the party, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it plays out. Hey, Jamie Dimon is someone we reference often on this show of J.P. Morgan Chase. He was channeling his inner Javier Milei recently. The headline from Fox Business is, Dimon says, time to fight back against bureaucrats. He's talking about the onslaught, what he called, David, the onslaught of regulations in the banking industry. We've been talking about the banking industry a lot in recent weeks and months, but he says some of the banks are afraid to push back because of retaliation from the bureaucracy. And so they're afraid to do what needs to be done.
And it does. That's what happens is you get on the bad side of the regulator governing you, and then they come after you even more. And, of course, he's in a comfort because he's the largest bank out there, basically. So, there's the big four, basically. That's Wells Fargo, Citi, Bank of America, and J.P. Morgan Chase. The big four kind of can push a little heavier back if they choose to, because they carry such a big stick, if you will. They're too big to fail, literally. The problem is we have 300 regional banks under them that are facing a crisis of insolvency. We've talked about that. And then this overregulation and compliance costs for them, because they get triple regulation coming overlapping, and that's what he's talking about. It's one thing, certainly we want our banks regulated and they want to be solvent, et cetera, but the rules keep changing and we keep creating new rules where they have to now add another layer of compliance, and in the end, that just means you and I have to pick up the tab, right? They're not going to, let's just eat this extra cost for this extra regulatory burden, so that cost comes through to you and I, and an NSF fee, an insufficient check fund fee, the average in the country 10 years ago was like $13. Now it's almost $40. So who pays that, Chip? The bottom half of America is the one paying this unburdened tax, if you will, inflationary tax on the fees, because they're the ones that would bounce checks more often, unfortunately, and then they get really slammed by this free checking account. And so I'm with them, and we need to push back on all the regulation. Industries, a lot of industries need to get to really push back here. I mean, in our industry, we have some overreaching regulation as well. I mean, and so when they end up trying to protect the consumer, like we have a Department of Labor ruling, what we call the fiduciary rule that's come in, now it's at stay, et cetera. Supreme Court is going to ultimately decide that, but it creates additional compliance costs, which means independent fiduciary-based advisors like us here at Retire Smart would have to say no to smaller accounts because we couldn't afford to service them. How is that helping the consumer? And again, this is what we're seeing is overregulation leads to unintended consequences and more government spending. Both things are bad, as we just discussed.
All right, David, in the couple minutes we have left, we finally arrive here at something Suze Orman said recently. Suze Orman swears by one retirement account. And here's the quotation from Orman. "You have to be crazy to use another. I don't care what tax bracket you're in." David, it's an account we've already talked about today in this show.
It's a Roth IRA. And so here's the thing, though. So many advisors, so many tax professionals, CPAs alike, still do not fully understand the rules of the Roth, Chip. So a Roth IRA is an amazing vehicle. Now, there's two primary rules we want to establish. One, you have to have the account open 5 years. Okay, so there's a 5-year clock from the day you open it and fund it with just $1 starts the 5-year clock. 2, you want to be what's called qualified age, which is 59 and a half. If those two things are true, you'll be able to take all the money out of those accounts tax free. No tax on the gains, et cetera.
Because you took the tax hit up front when you put the money
Correct.
in the account.
You already
right?
paid the tax and then you put it in there. Now, here's where the things get a little messy. There's actually 3 different ways to get money into a Roth IRA. Most people only know one. They think of what's called a contribution, right? So you want to contribute to your Roth IRA, you put $7,000 in there, et cetera. You've already earned it. Now, for that, you must have earned income. You must have earned income from a paycheck to be able to qualify to put some of that earned income into the account. So there are rules there, but that's the only way most people understand how to get money in a Roth. Now, you can't have zero income. As I mentioned, you have to have earned income. And then there's a limit, Chip. It's about $103,000 for a single or $206,000 for a married couple of that earned income. If you go over that limit, you can no longer contribute to that Roth IRA under the normal contribution rules. But that's only one of 3 ways to get money in a Roth. You can do what's called a backdoor Roth. I do it every year. So I make too much money for a normal contribution, so I can contribute to a traditional IRA. It's a non-deductible contribution. I don't get to write the deduction off my traditional IRA. It sits in the account for 1 day, and the next day I convert it to my Roth. Now it's in my Roth IRA and will stay there forever. So I can still contribute, and I do, into a Roth IRA. And the third way that we have really helped out, you can probably figure we don't like the IRS that much, so flip those letters around. SRI, Strategic Roth Integration. We actually have software. We federally trademarked that, and I actually license software to hundreds of offices all over the country to help people understand how to maximize the efficiency of moving money from a tax-deferred account to a tax-free account in the most tax-efficient way.
Well, and this, because you run into retirees who say, wow, too bad. I wish I'd have known about that while I was working.
It's never too late.
You can still do a Roth
We convert
conversion.
clients in their 90s, and it doesn't matter because we're going to benefit your beneficiary significantly, even if we're not going to benefit you.
Well, that'll do it for this week, folks. Please visit our events page at retiresmartomaha.com to see everything we currently offer. No charge, no obligation for our events, but you do need to register. You can do it online or by calling 402-369-7777. David, bring us home.
Have a blessed and great week.
Thank you for listening to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. For David Brooks and the entire team at Retire Smart, have a great week.